guys, we got this great clip from one of our long content videos. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Enjoy. How are we doing with our debt levels? So for us as PR consultants, or my company back home in Florida, FP Consultants, we don't keep a lot of debt. So when we look at this, generally speaking, I can look at this and tell you that we don't have very much debt. A few years ago, I was being told by some people that I really like and that I trust that I needed to borrow more money. And I was a little bit pig-headed about it. And we borrowed some money. But now sitting in 2024, looking back to the conversations I was having in 2020 and 2021, when my friend Jeff Murphy was telling me, Robbie, if you go borrow a bunch of money, you're going to feel like you're rich. And I didn't do it, and I wish that I had. So this is an important calculation that I wish that I'd paid more attention to 3 or 4 years ago when interest rates were extremely low. So the idea is to assess the debt levels on each property by calculating the debt to equity ratio. High levels of debt could increase risk and affect your decision to hold or to sell. Well, since we don't have any debt, we could have borrowed a safe amount of money and still had plenty of cash flow and been completely safe, be able to sleep at night, but we could add a pile of cash that we could be reinvesting. So I missed the boat there. So this is something that you guys, if you watch this YouTube, I give it to you straight. I tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. I was told by my friend Jeff, hey, Robbie, it's time to borrow money. It's at all-time lows. And we talked about it probably over the course of a couple of years, 2 or 3 different times. And I mostly ignored the advice that Jeff gave me, and now I sort of regret it. So I generally regret the things that I don't do, not the things that I do. And this is a case of that. I wish that back in 2020, 2021, we had borrowed a whole bunch of money at 3% or 4%, because now that money costs twice that. And we're probably not going, even if we did go to borrow some money, we wouldn't borrow as much, and it wouldn't be as safe to borrow as much. So, hey, you win some, you lose some. Number 6, when you're thinking about whether you should keep something or sell something, you want to think about tax implications. And so, of course, this sort of makes sense, right? Like if we were to liquidate some properties that we've got a ton of equity in Orlando, Florida, there's going to be some tax implications. We're going to have to pay long-term capital gains, and we've got to factor that into the sale. And we factor in things like, if we're going to liquidate in Florida, we could do what's called a 1031 exchange, and we could do other content on that. And actually that may be a good idea, guys. If you'd like some content on 1031 exchanges, leave me a comment, let me know, and we could do that in the future. But thinking about tax implications when you're selling something that you've got a massive gain on is just good business sense, right? And so we can't 1031 from Florida to Puerto Rico, but we could do something inside of opportunity zones. So there are ways that we could liquidate properties in Florida and bring the money to the island and not have to pay a bunch of tax to do it. And so these are just things that you need to think about when you're trying to decide whether you keep the property and kind of stand pat or you sell the property. What are your tax implications? All right, so number 7 then, we want to compare returns. And we're going to compare returns from what's the revenue that the properties are bringing in now versus what kind of return on investment would we get if we sold them. And then there's a third factor that we do, that we're doing all the time. If we sell something in Florida and we lose that revenue, how can we quickly then reinvest somewhere to recapture our revenue? Because we live on the cash flow. Cash flow is king for us, and that's why we invest in things. We do it for the long term. We want to get as close to passive income over a period of time, and it takes a while to get there. So when we're thinking about should we keep it or should we sell it, we're definitely thinking about what will we do with the money if we sell it? Where will it go next? And what's the highest and best return? Is it better to keep the property in Orlando, Florida and borrow against it and then use that money to buy something new? Or is it better to liquidate that property and then reinvest in a different asset class where we can get better returns cash flow wise and more appreciation? These are the kind of things that we think about on the day-to-day basis. Let me just add to that. When you've held stuff for a long time like we have, like when you have things for 5, 10, 15 years and you start looking at these things, it becomes pretty apparent that sometimes it doesn't make sense to keep things. And so part of our determination is if we've got a property in Orlando, Florida that has had this parabolic rise, and say it's a single family home and rents have maybe even doubled or maybe even done better than that, but our return on that appreciation level of equity from what we originally invested to what we're collecting in rents, it just can't possibly keep up. And then you factor in this other key metric, is that we recently had the massive run up. So it's unlikely for it to run up again. And say we're up 10x on something that we've had for 10 years or 15 years. That's a mighty return. And it's unlikely that we're going to 10x again over the next 10 years. But if we were to liquidate and then move to the island of Puerto Rico, or liquidate and move to a different asset class somewhere else, we might be able to find those outliers, and we might be able to find something where we can 10x over the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, or just get a better appreciation than we're going to get where we're at. Hey guys, thanks for watching that. Subscribe to our channel, watch this next, and then also check out the pinned content for more great content, guys. God bless.